What is up, wrestling fans? Welcome to episode number 562 of the Smark Moment Smack Talk podcast, Hot Tags of the Week. We're going to break down a lot for this episode. A lot of drama that happened because the last time that you heard from us for outside of the main event that we did for the NXT UK fantasy booking all-time pay-per-view card was the pay-per-view points of the weekend. And one of the major stories from that happened this week happened right after the pay-per-view during the press conference media scrum that happened at All Out. So there has been a ton of drama in AEW. All Elite Wrestling is just the talk of this week, but we do have other stories to talk about as well. And as we break that down, we want to know what you have to say. So by all means, drop your comments below and tell us what you think about all these topics. And of course, if you haven't already subscribed to this YouTube channel, do that. Ring that little notification bell, hit the like button if you enjoy this podcast to let us know about that. And, you know, kind of listen in and tell us your thoughts and everything. So, who are we? If you don't know, if you're brand new to the podcast, I'm Tony Mango. I've got with me my usual suspects here. I got Robert E. Felice.
Hello, everyone.
And Callum Wiggins.
My request to postpone this podcast due to the Queen's passing was denied.
Yeah,
I was going to call Callum the King of England, but I refrained.
You know what I found out? Because I don't know too much about them. About the Royals, because not only am I an ignorant American, but I don't care about celebrity kind of things and politics. So it's like the crossover doesn't work for me. Found out that every day she ate a jelly, like mostly strawberry jelly, and butter sandwich. Every day. I'm like, you know what? I can fuck with that. So that's your Queen news. I don't know. But I have had...
To be fair, it's obviously not what we're here to talk about, but in terms of things that happened this week, it's probably one of the biggest.
Oh, so, yeah. I mean, I was talking about other people when it comes to just the state of pro wrestling in 2022. And we'll talk about this probably at the end of the year of just like a year-end recap of sorts. But if you go on like the Wikipedia page for 2022 in pro wrestling, it's like just every couple of days, major event after major event. Things from like Ring of Honor being bought and titles being unified and McMahon retiring and this AEW stuff they're going to be talking about here and Ric Flair's last match and so on and so forth. But then when you get to outside of pro wrestling on top of that, I was saying, I forget exactly how I phrased it, but it was something along the lines of, I don't know a single person that hasn't gone through at least like 5 major changes in their life in the past 2 to 3 years, where it just seems like the world's in a reset thing of like, no, we're going to burn it all down. We're going to build it back up. This is huge news all across the world. It's a thing. And, you know, when we get into the A Review to a Kill series by the James Bond, I had said to you guys, hey, if they did remakes of the Bond series now, they'd have to make it on His Majesty's Secret Service. Isn't that kind of strange?
Yeah.
Anyway, check that out on Fanboys Anonymous. But yeah, we got a lot to get into here. I apologize in advance for the noise of the construction that is still going on. At any point, you might hear people drilling into the floor above me, I guess. I don't know if they're installing a floor or something, but I can't mute them like I can myself. But I don't want to mute myself. I want to talk about these things. I want to talk about... Let's hold the AEW stuff till the end. When we get around to talking about all of that in one shot.
Should we?
I think we should, because I think we should get some of the smaller things out of the way.
Do you think we're going to lose a lot of people listening if we do that?
No, I think you guys can, if you don't really want to know anything about it, you can skip a couple minutes ahead. But like one of them being Pat McAfee is going to be taking time off from SmackDown. He is going to be hosting a college football show instead, and WWE had apparently told him don't necessarily try to do both at the same time, because I think the other one's Saturday morning, so it'd be kind of difficult to do like Friday night and then Saturday morning. But I don't know how long that's going to last. I think it's 12 games is the season. I tried to look it up the other day, but I don't know if I got the right information. So for the next couple of months or so, we're not going to have Pat McAfee on SmackDown, and that sucks.
Yeah, he's a bright spot on SmackDown. I want to know who they'll replace him with. They'll probably just make Graves do double duty or something, but it will be a much missed energy every Friday night.
And of course, all the pay-per-views too.
Yes, that's true.
You guys got anybody that you think that they would run? Like you saying that you think that they might do just Corey Graves, but would you like to see somebody else necessarily in that spot?
Realistically, I think they'll do Corey Graves, but I would like to see Nigel in the spot.
That'd be cool.
I'd also realistically think, hey, Bradshaw's here. They like Bradshaw and Cole together.
I wouldn't be opposed to it. I liked the JBL and Cole team, and it's only for a few weeks. So, what about you, Callum? Anybody you think should slot in there and fill McAfee's role?
I've drowned out commentary at this point.
Even Cole McAfee?
I pretty much don't listen to commentary. So,
Now, do you listen like sound off, or do you just try to?
The whole thing goes on, and it's just a presence there that I pay zero attention to.
I understand that.
So it could literally be, unless it's someone who's like so unbelievably bad, like an Adnan Berg, like where it's so obvious it's bad. It's like I wouldn't be able to tell you any one thing that Jimmy Phillips has said in his entire run as a commentator on Raw.
Especially his name, because it's not Jimmy Phillips.
Or whatever his name is.
I think that's great because it proves the point so perfectly.
Jimmy Smith is his name.
Jimmy Smith, that's it. Okay. I'll get confused with him and Todd Phillips probably. Or
Good old Smithy Phillips.
Yeah, Smithy Phillips, yeah. Yeah, I couldn't tell you a single thing that he said in his entire run as a commentator. So.
Well, I can tell you he is okay. And
I'm sure he is. I'm sure they're all like. As I say that, I'm sure they're all fine. It's like it's going to make it difficult for me to choose like best and worst commentators of the year because at the end of the day, I'm just for the most part, I usually just like it's something. It's almost like white noise to me at this point because I listen to AEW ones.
I literally mute 90% of wrestling commentary.
I listen to the AEW ones mainly because I want to hear out to the point where William Regal hits on Excalibur.
Oh my god.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite parts of the week.
Now, you got to fill me in on this because that I didn't pick up on. What's happening?
Have you not been paying attention?
Every time that William Regal gets on commentary and he says like Mr. Maniac for Taz and like Mr. Ross if Jim Ross is there or Mr. Shivani, it says, "Oh, Mr. Excalibur, I want to eat you up, I want to spread you on a cracker and stuff like that." It's just.
No, I've not picked up on that. I gotta pay attention to that.
So good. Like, there's YouTube compilations already of like William Regal hitting on Excalibur on commentary. It's so good.
Oh, it's amazing. I'm surprised that you just drowned that out because that's one of the best parts of Wednesday night.
My favorite part of commentary in AEW is easily Excalibur and Taz just not giving a fuck on Dark. Anytime I watch that, or if I see the compilations on Botchamania or whatever, where they'll just goof off like a couple of middle schoolers or something.
Here's the one he said on Wednesday. "Man with the mask, you lovely little buttercup. I'd like to pick up your petals and rub them all over me."
Well, at least that's one part of AEW that seems people are getting along. We'll get into a lot of that in a couple stories. It's not going to be too long before we start talking about those things. Don't worry. Another story to talk about here, WWE related. We have potentially more confirmation on some other releases, but it's, the way that they have been doing things lately, they aren't flat out saying it for anybody, which is incredibly frustrating. But 3 people have been moved to the alumni page. Actually, 4 people, but technically one of them already said that he was released, which was Rohan Raja. I mean, he had tweeted out, like, "I'm gone." So we knew that was the thing. But Rampage Brown, Jinny, and Johnny Saint have all been moved to the alumni page. Which is interesting because Johnny Saint, I mean, you kind of assume that was an obvious thing. What's the use of a general manager that really wasn't even the general manager? He was kind of in name only and never really popped up on the show. It was Sid Scala that did more than anything. But Jinny and Rampage Brown were still on the WWE website per normal, and they only removed those 2, but they've kept a lot of the other ones. we still don't know anything about Stevie Turner, Aaliyah James, Ilya Dragunov. We could assume Dragunov's probably going to be one of the priority ones that they would want to keep, but no confirmation about it one way or another. There's still Oliver Carter, I believe, is one of the ones that hasn't been removed yet or popped up on NXT. Noam Dar. And that in itself is interesting too, because last time I checked, it might be different right now, but at least last night, Noam Dar and the Heritage Cup were not listed under the champions list. But if you go onto the championship, like little bar that you can see, they scroll for each title, they've got the Heritage Cup is listed as a present championship. And if you click on Noam Dar's page, he's still listed as the Heritage Cup champion. So they haven't gotten around to that yet. But they're taking some people out and they're not taking other people out, which either means those people are sticking around or they just haven't gotten any kind of, maybe Aoife Valkyrie's contract hasn't expired yet or whatever. Jinny and Rampage Brown, what do you guys think? Seems like they're gone.
I liked Rampage Brown. I think he brought a toughness that the UK scene kind of vibes with, and I think the American scene is kind of missing. And Jinny she should be brought up to SmackDown. She could do something. I don't know if she wants to go to the main roster or if she wants to explore the indies, but I think she could be doing something on TV.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really have much to say in terms of where I think they would have gone or if they would have been in any use in either NXT or on the main roster. I think Jinny has a charismatic influence to her, but I don't think she's much of an in-ring worker. She's okay, but she's nothing special. And unless they could, I think if she's not going to be involved in the Maximum Male Models thing or be an associate with like Pretty Deadly or something, then I guess that's kind of limits her options. And Rampage Brown, yeah, decent big guy, like mean guy wrestler, but again, don't think that there's anything that there isn't already enough of a presence of in WWE when you've already got Gunter and you've got Sheamus and you've got other big strong guys that do that kind of role. I think he probably would find it difficult to match up to someone like a Bobby Lashley, let's say. So in NXT UK, it was fine because a lot of the wrestlers were a bit smaller. So he could be like one of the only giants in there. So I don't think that it's likely that it would have translated well over into the main roster or over onto NXT. But if NXT Europe does come around, then maybe that'll be one of the people they end up calling back.
He is 39 too, so that the youth movement's been
that's
a
like
thing
your prime.
WWE.
That's like your prime in WWE.
For some people, yeah, that's true. But I could see that being the case, that they were just like, look, he's currently injured, I think, and we don't have any major plans for him. So that doesn't shock me as much as the Jinny one. Jinny was a surprise for me because I just figured naturally she is either dating or engaged or whatever to Gunther. And I mean, more than likely, people tend to stick around when they've got their... it doesn't happen for everybody, obviously. It's, other people are like, Adam Cole was still in WWE when Britt Baker signed AEW and so on and so forth. But I would have thought that they would have brought her up to SmackDown, or at least attempted to do that. And maybe she doesn't want to. Maybe there's something else to it. I don't know. But the fact that we didn't get all of them is also interesting to me. Like, they didn't just remove Aoife Valkyrie and Oliver Carter and whatnot. I think that maybe they're just kind of whittling away here and there. But you can never really trust the WWE website. You can trust my website more than them in a lot of different ways because I update things much quicker. So go to smarkoutmoment.com, check out the roster pages and everything. I have updated those for those. I think that something else that's a little bit interesting, it's just one of those little stupid things, but Ashanti the Adonis is not listed as Ashanti the Adonis anymore. It's just Ashanti Adonis. So I guess they're taking out the... I guess we'll see on SmackDown tonight if they still refer to him as that, but, whatever. As far as some other hot tags go, let's talk about some titles changing hands in a different way. Some job titles. Triple H was listed before as the executive vice president of talent relations, and now somebody named Dan Ventrelle is going to be the executive vice president of talent relations. I don't know anything about him, but he seems like he has not been a part of the wrestling business. So
he's the president of the Las Vegas Raiders. So he comes from a sports background.
I don't know if I love that idea of somebody who isn't tapped into wrestling being the talent relations guy.
He's got to manage the talent. He can manage athletes. He's not making any yay or nay decisions, I'd imagine, because now there's a whole different structure, considering that there's no one guy that just, gives a thumbs up or thumbs down.
Do you think that they're going to treat this more as just like he is the contract kind of guy, as opposed to he's helping with the talent scouting?
He could be helping with the talent scouting, which I think is fine when your business model is shifting towards athletes and looking for a certain quality of athlete. But I also think it doesn't have to feel like, oh, is he making decisions based on pro wrestling? He can approach it from one angle, and you have Sean and Hunter taking care of it from the wrestling angle.
Well, Triple H's position has changed in name to Chief Content Officer, which they've clarified. He will oversee creative writing, talent relations, so that's part of that, live events, talent development, and creative services. And he'll still report to... I thought it was kind of interesting. It said that he will report directly to Nick Khan. They didn't say that he reports directly to Stephanie McMahon. I don't know why they specify that, but maybe Stephanie is just literally working on a separate thing. So it's like, look, we're going to separate everything as only the talent-related creative things on that, and then all of the business branding kind of deals for Stephanie. That might be their game plan going forward, but Triple H...
It might have just been a conflict of interest thing. Yeah, he's going to report to his wife. Like maybe they just didn't want to phrase it like that.
Yeah. Chief Content Officer, though.
I like it. That's got a nice ring to it. It's honest. I
wouldn't be opposed to them changing some of these phrasings around just to go with the most clear and direct thing. Yes, Chief Content Officer. I will be producing the stuff you see on TV. Okay, that's a lot easier than you're an executive vice president of talent relations versus creative services versus whatever. I'm sure there's a whole structure and a system and whatever that we're not privy to, but Triple H at least changing up even that dynamic. It's kind of interesting. They're really going all around the WWE spectrum of like, what do we change? What do we make things better? I think that's cool. Any thoughts on that, Callum?
I question the making things better part of it, but yeah, I assume he's just bringing in his own crew of people, and now that he's in a higher position of power, and I presume that the likelihood is that Nick Khan has connections to these people as well, because if he's essentially one of the two figureheads running the company, that he will have a lot of say in which people are brought into these kinds of positions. So I think the likelihood is that it's not really a Triple H call, it's probably a Nick Khan call more than anything else, for at least the new EVP of Talent Relations.
Let's move over to rounding out the WWE talk with the TV stuff, and then we'll just kind of lump all the AEW things together. Let's talk about Monday Night Raw. We got some interesting things here and there, like the return of Braun Strowman. He destroyed the entire tag team division, basically. See a lot of people that hate this move. I see some people that really don't necessarily care, or some people that are just focused on the idea that, hey, Braun Strowman's back. That's pretty cool. Hey, guys, play into that.
He should have never been released. Especially at a time where you needed any drop of star power you can get. He is on paper a former world champion. He should have never been released. He looks in great shape, and I think he'll be a fine upper mid card guy who can, play the big show role of teetering up and down the card as needed. The debut or the return itself, I wasn't a fan of because I felt like, oh fuck, they're doing something with tag teams, and then it was just fodder for Braun Strowman. But shout out to New Day for not getting hit.
Yeah, I mean, I'm super enamored one way or the other. He's a big guy, and the current crop of really big guys they have on the roster is not particularly impressive. Omos is not very good. Commander Aziz is a flop. They've got Gunther, obviously, but he kind of doesn't really fit the giant mold in the same way that Strowman does. But, I mean, that would be an interesting match they could do down the line. Strowman is more, even though he's not the most technically gifted wrestler of all time, he's definitely more proficient than someone like an Omos, and so that's an elevation on that side of things. But, I mean, it's not like it's a game changer for me. I doubt that he's going to be like a multi-time world champion off the back of this, or even become world champion at any point in this next run, unless he gets super over again. But he hasn't been super over since 2018. So I don't hold up much hope of it happening again, especially if they're bringing him in a babyface role as well. It just seems odd. Like, I think that you bring him in as a heel, and if he gets over again, then you turn him babyface. But I think they've decided to go down the route they're going with, and hopefully it works out for them.
There's a couple of people that I am interested in seeing him feud with. I think that he can be a good person that Karrion Kross beats to elevate Karrion Kross. Gunther, of course. I mean, it's an obvious match to see those two big hosses go at it. And then you can kind of go around the list and see if they're, depending on if he's a heel or a face or whatever. Like, I could see Braun Strowman versus Damian Priest being fun. I could see him having something fun with, practically anybody if it's like a one-off at the very least. But maybe he works with like a Veer Mahan. It makes a difference there. Maybe he has a great match in the future against like an Austin Theory where he's the big guy that Theory topples over, or, whatever. I've always been a fan of Braun Strowman, so I'm down for that.
I think it's a stretch to say. I don't think Braun Strowman's had a great match with anybody. Maybe one or two with Roman Reigns, but that's kind of it. If you're looking to him to actually come out here and have some great matches with people, then you're on a hiding to nothing, because he's a big guy, and he's Big Show doesn't really have a huge catalogue of great matches. He's an attraction, and he'll be good by those standards, but unless you're looking forward to a guy just running around the ring for like a couple of times, I don't think that there's much else to really gain out of it.
Well, it's different types of matches, because not everybody's like great match is the Kenny Omega type of match, or even like the Gunther and Sheamus brawling type matches. And Strowman's the type of guy that I think he works best when he has some sort of last man standing kind of stipulation to it, and he can just, big spots and big power moves and everything. I'm not expecting him to have the best chemistry with Johnny Gargano in like a wrestling technical spectacular or anything, but I think this is a good spot for him to be back in there. He looks great, as Rob mentioned. He's slimmed down and put on more muscle, it seems. So that's good on his end. And seems like he's probably going to be a part of the SmackDown roster, so that makes sense. Keep him with Raquel, because they're an item.
Keep him with Raquel, you keep him with Cross. It's going to work out pretty well, I think. I want to see him fight Breaker. I really do.
Yeah, that's another one down the line. And he could have
a silly car crash kind of match. You know what I mean? I think it could be fun.
He could have like a one-off title shot with Roman, I think. It's been a little bit of enough time that I wouldn't be like, oh, we just saw this like we've seen with some other things, but I don't think that should be some 3-month feud or whatever.
Roman obliterated him and made him control his narrative. So I think you have to frame it right. But if you're framing it as this big revenge ploy and then he just gets his ass handed to him again, you're going to have to rehab your monster. So I hope they don't go right there.
Yeah. If you have him get jobbed out, you're going to kill it, What other stuff happened on Monday Night Raw? We got the non-title match with the men's titles.
Finally.
Well, I mean, that happened at Clash at the Castle,
Yeah,
but
they didn't have him
officially join Judgment Day. Yeah. And he, the best thing that I had seen as a response to what he looks like now is people equating him to, there's one episode of Stranger Things where 11 has her hair slicked back and she's wearing like this 80s punk kind of outfit. It's the only episode that people tend to dislike. I don't think it's all that bad, but she, like, her vibe and Dominic's vibe match up so perfectly. So people are kind of just going like, oh, look, I've seen this episode of Stranger Things before.
But without like slicking the hair back and putting on the, nicer clothes, he looks better already than what he was looking like as he was coming out along with his dad. I would shout out Edge and Ray for the work they did here on the microphone. I really enjoyed the "please don't hurt my son" and the "I'm sorry, he's old enough to answer for his actions." I think they're doing a lot to try and help him get to that next level, and hopefully he can show a new side of himself that'll get him there.
I hope so, because it's not working for me yet. I was making fun of it when I was watching Raw. Caroline and I are eating dinner, and I was like basically verbatim saying what Rey Mysterio's lines were going to be about the whole like, but he's my kid, and Dom, don't do this. Bad acting. To quote her, she's like, oh my god, I've seen better acting in porn movies.
Because you're bad acting, it's bad storytelling. Because this is the thing that we spoke about on the Clash of the Castle review. He's just joined Judgment Day. Straight away. And he cost them the match. They lost the match at Clash of the Castle because of Dominic. And now he's just there.
Well, now this is a running thing with Judgment Day, is
they suck.
That they pick up the losers.
They're a really, really... They pick up the loser in every match they face in, and they consistently lose the big matches they're in. Like, for a group that everyone seems to be, like, well, a lot of people seem to be raving about and, like, seem super fascinating, they're just a bunch of losers.
Mm-hmm.
The only one that isn't a loser is Rhea Ripley.
That's why I think they need to lean heavily into Rhea Ripley, and Dom could be a good start to that.
She has to be, if there's any kind of leader, it has to be her.
Yeah. So, I mean, we'll see. Maybe Dominic does able to develop some level of personality, but I didn't see any here other than, like, because he didn't really say anything of real meaning or do anything of real, like, significance. He was just he's just there in black clothes with that terrible mullet.
Yeah, I was really hoping that there could be some kind of hair versus mask match down the line and that gets shaved off, because...
Well, that's still on the table. I don't think that's completely an impossibility. I do think that they need to lean more into the, Rhea is Poppy and he really likes Rhea, because I was surprised that they didn't lean into that. She made the comment of, I made him a man, but I think if you lean more into it, it'd just be more fun and more character work for everybody involved, instead of, okay, he's here and he's wearing black clothing.
The only other thing really that happened on Raw that I feel like is worth touching on is just the idea that Bobby Lashley once again retaining the United States Championship in a steel cage match, and they were doing a great job of really elevating that idea of, look, Lashley is putting this belt on the map. These belts matter. It's something that's been a major uptick with Triple H in charge.
I agree. I think that the work for the IC title and the US title has been phenomenal. You can argue that it's the bare minimum, but the bare minimum is the top of the ladder compared to what we were getting for the last several years. I want them to do more work with tag teams, but I have confidence that they'll eventually get there.
Anything else that happened on Raw you guys feel like talking about?
Oh, Tommaso Ciampa got his name back.
I want to talk about this main event. Because it's obviously good that Bobby Lashley is consistently defending the title on TV. It means the title is getting represented more, which is great. I need to ask though, where's this Dexter Lumis thing actually going?
I don't know.
What is the point of this Dexter Lumis thing? Because at the moment it just seems like, oh, look at Dexter Lumis popping up from under the ring, or oh, look at Dexter Lumis. He's leaning in the background or staring in the crowd at the Miz. Like, what is it actually that I know this whole thing of like motivations and storytelling, it doesn't need to be completely clear cut all the time, but what is it exactly that Dexter Lumis wants with the Miz? Because, correct me if I'm wrong, but he's already kidnapped the Miz, right?
Yes.
So he already had the Miz and he let the Miz go, and now he's stalking the Miz again.
Oh, you play with your prey.
What is this build? Is this the whole thing? Is like we're supposed to be super excited about seeing a Miz versus Dexter Lumis match? Because I don't know. Again, your mileage may vary. I couldn't think of anything that I'd want to watch less than a Miz versus Dexter Lumis match. It's like, yeah, Dexter Lumis is like serviceable, and the Miz is serviceable. So I get to see two serviceable wrestlers have a probably serviceable comedy style match. And again, I wouldn't mind as much if this was like mid-card fodder, but this was the main event of the show, and the main event was built around, you say obviously United States title got featured, but the main event was built around Dexter Lumis crawling out from under the ring. That's what your whole main event angle is.
I'm okay with it for now because they are using it to spotlight the belt, and I think Dexter is a pawn to just do different things right now and see like, okay, this week we did this weird thing. I thought that Ciampa was going to slam the door on The Miz and leave him in there with Dexter. And then maybe you could get to, well, it's Ciampa, it's Dexter, it's Gargano, because there's at least a loose thread there. I don't know where this is going.
I assume it's basically Miz versus Dexter Lumis in some sort of a gimmicky match at Extreme Rules, and I'm fine for that being in the mid-card.
I'm all right with that, but also I do want to know why. Like, why The Miz? Go kidnap AJ. You'll have a better match.
I think that's because Miz is somebody that you can go higher from, but he's still notable enough that it matters. You know, he is a former 2-time world champion and everything, so it's not like Dexter Lumis is starting a feud with Akira Tozawa, where it's like, okay, well, clearly Lumis just beats him and that's the end of it. And Miz is a comedy, gimmicky promo guy, so Lumis is somebody who doesn't cut promos. Miz has to hold the weight of ushering that character into the main roster for anybody who doesn't know him from NXT. And then when you've got somebody who can play into like the more ridiculous side of things, then you can have more fun with it. I think this is actually the perfect person to do that with. It's not going to be the best match in the world. It's not going to get some 5-star rating, but I don't think that would have been the case with any of them.
But Tony, you've kind of, I get what you're saying, but you've explained the mechanical reason of why Dexter Lumis and The Miz make sense. What's the kayfabe reason?
I mean...
What's the thing that actually supposedly Triple H is doing a great job at, which is storytelling? Like, what is he actually doing on that front?
I'll give you that one. There's no kayfabe reason for it.
That's what I was getting at. We know why. He's working with
there's absolutely, in your way of saying that, I can totally see him thinking that same sort of logic, because it makes total sense. Yeah, The Miz is someone, for all the flaws that I do point out with him, he is a great talker and so can hold up his end of the bargain with a guy whose character is he's a mute. But I think that they should, if they're going to go with that as like the logical reason for this being the case, they need to, create a story around why Dexter Lumis wants to go after The Miz. And it could be literally for any reason. It could be that he likes the Pokemon card that he's got wrapped around his neck. It could be anything around that. But we have no concept or idea of why Lumis is after The Miz, and the fact that he already had The Miz and let him go, and he's still going after him.
That's I'd be alright with them saying Logan Paul is like paying.
Right, I was going to actually suggest that.
If they manage to come up with an idea behind it, it's fine. It's just at the moment it feels disconnecting because there's there's seemingly no reason for it going in the way that it is going.
Yeah, it's not like Miz has a championship, so he's going after him to get to the championship, or that there's like he's infatuated with Maurice, so he's trying to take out the Miz to get to Maurice or something. Like, yeah, they need to give some kind of a rational explanation, but
yeah,
I guess we'll see. Maybe they do have some quote unquote long-term storytelling in mind. They probably don't.
Clear, I was fine with the first few weeks, you know. Okay, you're telling a story that this guy doesn't work here. Now that it's been, 4 or 5 weeks, now's where you need to go, okay, why the Miz?
Yeah. And it will also be just a case of, again, probably talking about this more than necessarily need to, especially because we're moving on to AEW stuff later on, but it's the whole idea that if people haven't watched him in NXT, they have no idea who this guy is. And they've been given really nothing to go on other than the fact that he seemed really fascinated with The Miz. So we don't know who this guy is. If you're, again, I don't want to say like the casual fan, but there is a significant portion of the Raw audience that doesn't watch NXT.
Right.
Based on any viewership thing. So you would have to assume that a lot of people are just wondering, who is this mute guy that just seemingly pops out of nowhere to try and distract The Miz?
I agree.
But that's it. That's all from the Raw side. There's one other thing, but it kind of bleeds over into NXT if we're going to talk about NXT next.
Yeah, let's transition over. What is it?
Okay, so it's the Nikki ASH and Doudrop stuff.
Yeah,
which again doesn't seem like the biggest deal, but again it's one of these little like holes that I think Triple H is doing actually really good stuff with. If he is in more of a creative control area with NXT going forward, I think bringing over the NXT UK people has really helped freshen up the roster, and it's led to some really good matches. So I don't really have too much complaints in the overall NXT. But the story they were telling on Raw, in these little like backstage vignettes that Triple H likes to do, where there's things happening in the background of whatever the actual interview or segment is, they showed Nikki ASH angry with Doudrop, ripping off her mask. And seemingly that was going to be the direction they were taking, whether it would lead to a feud between two of them or Nikki reverting back to a Nikki Cross type character. Yeah, I mean, that would make total sense if that's the direction they want to go with.
Mm-hmm.
But then they show up on NXT against Toxic Attraction, a team that, as of a couple of weeks ago, seemed like they were primed to go up to the main roster and potentially even go far into that tag team title tournament. And they just beat them.
Yeah,
they just lose to Doudrop and Nikki ASH.
I'm really curious what their plan is here, because as we mentioned with the Worlds Collide review, it seemed like it was a kind of easy thing to do of Toxic Attraction is not holding the tag team titles anymore. Mandy Rose could drop the women's title to Miko or to Blair Davenport, and then they can just move all three up to the main roster, and then they kept it on Mandy. So then that seemed like, all right, well, either Dolan and Jane are going up to the roster or they're sticking in NXT for the foreseeable future. Toxic Attraction interferes and costs Doudrop and Nikki the tag team titles. And then they lose on Raw, but then they went on NXT and then they keep this feud. So they're heels on Raw, they're baby faces on SmackDown. I saw like Natalya and some other people kind of gushing over the fact that Doudrop and Nikki won that match as if that really matters. And then that's kind of, what the taking off the mask thing is she going to be Nikki Cross on the main roster and Nikki ASH on the NXT roster? Or is this just...
You're overthinking it. You're completely overthinking it. Yes, they need to close that logic gap, but this is one that I'm actually willing to let them play out, because they have been telling something of a story literally every week. And it's with these two in particular, they're always just in the background arguing. I think it'll get somewhere that will at least lead to both dropping their silly names. That's my hope. That's where my optimism is leading me.
So we get Nikki Cross and Piper Niven.
Yeah, at least so you get that. Maybe they get serious. Maybe they do stay as a tag team, because the division does need tag teams, because your tag team champions are Raquel and Aaliyah for at least another 3 days. And I'm willing to see it play out.
I'm curious about a few things that it's happening right now in NXT. One of them being that we had JD McDonough beat Wesley, and then later on in the night, they had set this up about Gallus kind of being like, hey, Tyler Bate, you didn't hold up your end of the bargain. You should have won that NXT championship. And he's like, well, you lost too. And then that leads to Gallus losing to Braun Breaker and Tyler Bate. But then JD McDonough comes out and attacks Bate and has another stare down with Breaker. They did the match. We've had Breaker versus McDonough. We're just going to go back to it?
I think that was probably more likely to set up McDonough versus Bate instead. Which again, I don't know the reason necessarily for doing that beyond the fact that they had good matches in NXT UK, so they're just going to do it on NXT instead.
If it would have ended with just the attack, then I wouldn't have been as confused about it. But they put a lot of attention on the idea that Breaker was like McDonough was sending a signal to Breaker by attacking Bate.
I think I do just genuinely think that it's just him attacking Bate, and that will be the feud going forward. I think it was just due to the fact that Braun Breaker and Tyler Bate seemingly have struck up a nice kinship between each other. I mean, that tag team match was a really good match, and they looked like a really weird version of the Steiners together.
With the little spot with the barking and all.
Yeah. But I think it's just he's going to go after Tyler Bate, and it was just a means of Braun Breaker was just there to make the save because that's what a good babyface champion should do. I have no idea who his next challenger will be. They don't seem to have that in line, and it certainly can't be Joe Coffey because, well, not that it would be a bad match, but they haven't really exactly done a great job of presenting Gallus as a real threat. I mean, they're coming out with security guards and they're beating them up, and apparently they need to be under constant security watch. But then they come out in the matches, and for the most part, they lose.
Right.
So again, a bit of a disconnect there. So I think that they should be heading towards Grayson Waller as the guy that I see as the next champion.
Damon Kemp explained why he turned on the Creed brothers, and it's basically, I'm better than this. You didn't make me a star. I should have been the focal point of Diamond Mine. Okay. It's fine.
Kind of lame, but better than, and Roddy was evil all along. Ha ha ha.
Yeah.
I still think that there's something they could do with that. I think that there's a good chance that Roddy and Damon Kemp are in on it together. And so they fake the attack, and Roddy's going to use that to get back into the Creed brothers' good graces, and then he'll turn on them again, and so it'll just be like a double betrayal.
I could see them going with the lesser version of a split where Roderick Strong is like, you guys didn't believe in me. Man, I don't even want to be a part of Diamond Mine anymore. That's how it just ends.
I could go like that as well, yeah.
Kiana James
what a
has
weird
this
faction, Diamond Mine, huh? That history is...
Yeah, Marita Shafir and Tyler Rust and Malcolm Bivens and Hachiman and all these other people that have been a part in and out. Tatum Paxley's perpetually been almost a member and everything. It seems like we have a tag team going on now, Kiana James and Ariana Grace. And then Kiana James has her recurring now assistant, Giovanna Bernio. So we got that character, and we're continuing on with the idea that Schism and Tony D'Angelo are trying to recruit people. Tony D'Angelo put Cameron Grimes through a table because he rejected him again. Sol Ruca is coming to NXT. She's been on Level Up. I haven't seen a single one of her matches, but whatever. Miko Satomura beat Roxanne Perez. Cora Jade attacked Perez after the match.
A lot of people said the match was really good. Good for Roxanne, You can't have bad match with Miko. I think people overplayed it a bit, but you can't have bad match with her.
Ricochet beat Trick Williams. And Axiom and Nathan Fraser had the first of their best of 3 matches.
Which I was really hoping was just a 2 out of 3 falls. But it's actually a
3 match.
Best of 3 series. Yeah. It's a little silly.
I'm cool with that. We don't see a lot of those nowadays. Like, rematch is going to be good if you have a nice little series attached to it. I would like to know what the aim of that 3-match series is. Surely it should be North American title opportunity.
The thing I don't like about those matches, though, is Axiom wins this one. We know that Fraser's going to win the next one. Because then why even bother doing a best of 3? And then you basically just go, okay, we can skip that one, and then we can just go to the third one. But maybe they end up being a tag team. I don't know.
Yeah, they could do that like the whole Sheamus Cesaro thing.
Yeah. And at least as far as the SmackDown side of things is concerned, we've got the potential stuff tonight with, who's going to be a number 1 contender, probably Ronda Rousey. Braun Strowman's going to pop up, and, we'll see if anything happens there that ends up being, like, particularly interesting. But that's WWE. We got to get into the AEW stuff. That is a whole mess. And if you want to make sure that you are cleaning up the mess that's going on with your body, then you should take advantage of our sponsors for this episode, Manscaped. Use our promo code SMARK, SMARK, just like the website. Get 20% off and free shipping on whatever it is that you pick up. Maybe you are going to trim off some of the roster down below, and you can use your advanced skin safe technology over there on your lawnmower 4.0 to make sure that you don't get your nicks and everything. You don't want to be all bloodied up like CM Punk was at that press conference. You got the shears kit, so you can cut people instead of biting them, like what he Steel did. It's a different type of steel. And if you want to get the ball cleansers or the crop preservers, crop gels, or anything along those lines, this is applicable to everything on the site. 20% off and free shipping as long as you use that promo code SMARK. Great products over there on Manscaped. We can't recommend them enough. And if you pick anything up, you got to let us know what you got and give us your thumbs up on that, because I'm sure you're going to love it. And so thank you to Manscaped for sponsoring this. Thank you to anybody who picks up a product. It's a great way for you to let them know that you were able to go to their site through us by using that promo code. And it helps out the website quite a bit, helps keep the lights on here, just the same as all the other things that are under the Marketplace that you can see up on your screen right now. If you want to pick up merchandise, it's at Redbubble and TeePublic. If you have the funds to donate directly to the site, and just, toss a little spare change our way, there's the thanks button that you can see right near the like button on YouTube here. There's the Patreon, and there's the equivalent of the Patreon on the YouTube channel membership, which if you click the join button, you can get access to the same things like the Darkcast and the Pick Your Poison tier. And even if it's just $1 a month, that actually helps out a lot too, especially the more people that do it. As I've mentioned many times in the past, if everybody who signed up for subscribing to this YouTube channel donated $1 a month for all that we give you guys on smarkmoma.com and on fanboysanonymous.com and on the 2 different YouTube channels, that would be not only a huge game changer when it comes to this kind of podcast, but on Fanboys and my life in general. So if you're a part of the 4,000 something people that are subscribed to this channel, consider donating $1 a month, and then you will see more and more from us. You'll get happier co-hosts and happier podcast going forward, because we will be able to do more fun things and more of them. So keep that in mind, everybody. Thank you for all your support, whether it's Manscaped or the things that are on this marketplace. Let's start getting into the AEW stuff, because this is some spicy stuff here. I guess the way we should start is to talk about how things ended from All Out, just to kind of, I guess, set the stage for anybody who hasn't been following this as much. Very quickly, All Out ends with, we've got the World Trios Championship crowned. The Elite are holding those titles. CM Punk has beaten Jon Moxley to win back his championship. We go to the media scrum. I think it's the first question that is asked by...
No.
It was the first one?
It's not. There wasn't a single question asked by the time Punk... Just to, again, don't want to steal the thunder too much, but it's a... Punk walked into that scrum looking to set fire to the entire building with his words, pretty much. because pretty much the first thing he says when he sits down is he challenges everyone in the room to essentially say, "Do you call yourself journalists?" That kind of phrasing, and then starts talking about Scott Colton.
Well, he had addressed Nick Hausman,
okay.
right?
I can set this up. So he is getting his face wiped of the blood. He's getting his drinks and his Mindy's bakery
his
goods.
9 drinks or whatever it was. It was like, oh my God, you got to down those.
That fucking cupcake.
And look,
I am so curious, by the way, about that cupcake shop. I am so curious if they were just like slammed on because Punk says something about
they were closed on Monday.
Closed on Mondays and Tuesdays. Yeah, I'm so curious if they just got like a butt ton of orders. But yeah, he sets down his stuff. He gets himself all situated.
He looks at Nick and he says, "Do you still do improv?" And he goes, "So would you say you're friends with Scott Colton?" And from there, off we go.
Yeah, he goes off. Even when he's not prompted for these kind of responses, even when they've moved on to other things, and people could be like, "So, I want to ask Tony Khan, what do you think about Jade Cargill or something?" And Punk will be like, "Yeah, and another thing, fuck Colt Cabana." This became so awkward, and you can see how uncomfortable Tony Khan is. He's almost kind of acting the way that like you see somebody at like a restaurant, especially if it's something like a McDonald's or whatever, and somebody has like their little kids making noise and they just sort of zone off and look into the distance and act like, "Nope, I'm not seeing the kid. Please don't ask me about it." He's got that kind of a response, but then he's also saying things like, "I regret that I didn't just address this at first to like get ahead of it." But Punk continues to go back to it, continues to talk about how Colt Cabana shares a bank account with his mom. So he's belittling him, and he's basically trying to air out all the dirty laundry about something that doesn't have anything to do with All Out. So you could have been focusing on, now you're the champion again. What are your goals for defending that title now that you are back from your injury? Seems like that's another issue too. And then you can get into the MJF stuff. You can whatever. Some of the highlights, and I'm going to forget about a lot of them, so I'm sure you guys will remind me about them. One of them being that Punk continually kept saying that Tony Khan wants him to work with pricks like MJF and everything. So you're going to, not in character, basically bury the roster and be like, yeah, he's fucking little ingrates and whatnot. You got Punk talking about how I could understand backing up your friends, which that's going to be an issue a few minutes after he leaves the press conference. This would have been interesting enough as it is if that's all it was Punk going off and talking. But we get, some other people throughout the night of Tony Storm kind of being like, Thunder Rosa claims that she's injured. That was another story. People are like, is she kind of pissed about that? You got Swerve in Our Glory basically being asked over and over, yeah, but don't you think that the Claim should have won the titles? Which I can understand them being a little bit pissed about that. Just being like, motherfuckers.
If I could just touch on that real quick, because that's a really fucked up question. Look, I get that these media scrums, that everybody gets into a zone of no, but we're asking out of character questions.
Mm-hmm.
You don't sit there and go, yeah, but don't you feel like they should have just called an audible and said that you guys are done representing the division now?
I thought that was pretty rude.
I don't think that that's right, but I think that they have parlayed that into something that we'll see on television when the Acclaim do get a rematch at Grand Slam in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, we'll come back to this when we talk about what happened on Dynamite too. But
to briefly touch on CM Punk's comment at the media scrum, I think that everything he said about Scott Colton was legitimate. I think that when he warped into, I'll tell you about MJF. This guy keeps wanting me to work with pricks. I think that was him playing it up. I think that was a bit like, I know I'm about to go into a program with MJF. I'll call him a prick. But CM Punk clearly was not happy with the amount of rumors circulating about him threatening to walk out and everything going into the match at All Out. And because so much of it stemmed from, well, it all stems from Colt Cabana, dating back to Hangman's promo from Bay, people felt like, okay, let me address this Colt Cabana thing then. I feel like he was overly emotional, just started to explode, and I feel very, very conflicted about it from a media standpoint, where it's like, look, these reports were out there, and yes, everybody is doing the right thing by reporting them because it's the job. But I think there was a very human element to what he was saying. He even ended the whole thing by going, "Have a good evening. Please remember we're all human beings." It sounds like he was very emotionally torn by the fact that it had turned into he's negative, he's toxic, and then it just blew up into something that was actually really negative and really toxic.
When we talk about this stuff that we're going to be unpacking here, I want this to be kind of clear in case anybody's thinking this is going to be like a bash session. I think you guys probably are in agreement with me. If you're not, of course, let me know. But I think that all parties are right and guilty of handling things the incorrect way. I don't have any kind of like, this is entirely CM Punk's issue, or this is entirely a Colt Cabana issue, or entirely the Elite's fault, or anything along those lines. I think that this is one of those situations where there is a nugget of truth to everybody's perspective, and it's just kind of handled in an unprofessional way that certain people did screw up and certain people do look worse than other people here and there. And we'll talk about, like, you know, why wasn't Paige suspended and why were other people's, and, you know, we're gonna bounce around here. But I want, for anybody who's thinking that this is going to be, you know, some half-hour long FCM Punk thing, I think he's got some legitimate points. You guys kind of agree?
I'm not. I think from the standpoint of everyone, it has part to blame here for this. I totally am on board with that point. I think the legitimacy of Punk's points and anybody else's point pales into insignificance about the fact that, and I know we haven't gotten to the post CM Punk's comments point, but essentially these are a group of people in their 30s and 40s that are behaving like children.
Yes, definitely.
And so even if some of his points are legitimate, it is completely overshadowed by the fact that he's a grown-ass adult and should be able to handle his business in a very more professional way. For a guy to come out on TV and basically bemoan the fact that Hangman Page in a promo went into business for himself, and then basically spend the next half an hour going into business for yourself in a very public forum with the owner of the company that is paying you a significant sum of money to work for you.
To be your top guy.
Yeah. Who's just given you the title for the second time after getting injured. And as we will talk about, you're injured again. And so they're going to continue to pay you to sit at home recovering from surgery, from another surgery. I think he is an unbelievable hypocrite, and overall, just, yeah, some of his points are legitimate. Maybe he does have a reason to be pissed and he wants to get a quote like, "Oh, we're all human." Well, yeah, we are all human, and we can have moments of severe emotion and being legitimately angry and stressed about it. But most of us don't decide to use the incredible platform that we have, backed by the millions of dollars that we earn, to then decide to spout out about it, because he gives the impression of a guy who thinks he's bigger than the company that he works for.
Like he's doing them a favor. by being
Even
there.
the fact that he's doing them a favor, he's saying like, I'm pissed and I've got this platform, I've got this microphone, I've got this audience in front of me that's going to hang on every word that I say, and I'm just going to do it because what the fuck are they going to do? I'm CM Punk.
It's interesting because you mentioned that, and I might have forgotten to even bring this up, but one of the things that stood out to me was, I don't remember exactly the phrase, but he had said something along the lines of, I'm trying to run a company.
Yeah, he's basically saying, I'm trying to run a business here. He definitely used that phrase at some point.
Yeah, like the impression being, this is my company. And you can argue like, okay, well, you are the world champion, so you have that kind of responsibility, but it's not that responsibility when you've got Tony Khan right next to you. And one of the main criticisms that's happening with Tony Khan lately, and I don't disagree with this, is people going, dude, grow some balls and tell him to shut the fuck up. You're right there. You know, nip this in the bud and be the leader that you run this company. You have to. Booker T had phrased it pretty well. He said, when things happen like this, you don't fire the quarterback, you fire the coach. But that was very astute.
Well, it's kind of hard. It's kind of hard
you
to
can't
fire
fire
coach
yourself.
if you're the
guy
that owns the company.
That's not going to be in that situation, but it's you blame poor leadership on that, essentially.
Yeah, he definitely should have cut CM Punk off at some point or tried to steer him away from this. But at the end of the day, I think Punk is not that sort of guy that's, again, as we know in multiple instances in the past, he's not a guy that takes kindly to authority.
Yeah.
So I think he would have found a way around it one way or the other. But
I would have liked to have seen Tony Khan say something, though, after the first blow up that Punk did, say something like, we're not going to be addressing anything like that going forward. We're here to talk about All Out. And then if Punk starts going, and another thing that he would be like, as I said, like, whatever, all right, that's it, you know, kind of.
Yeah, just cut it short, yeah.
Right, like,
just like
again, to go back to the analogy of somebody dealing with their little kid at, you know, Walmart running around or whatever, for it to be like the stop it or we're going to go home kind of thing.
But obviously we need to talk about this before we head into the next stage in this whole altercation and this whole event that took place post All Out, which is the discussion about the EVPs. So one of his main gripes about this whole Scott Colton Colt Cabana incident is the fact that he very much alluded to, if not outright said, that the EVPs were the one who were leaking the information out, spreading the rumors that he was the one who got Scott Colton kicked off the AEW roster and packed him off to Ring of Honor instead. And he talks about them not having a clue about how to run a business. Him obviously talking about the fact that he knows how to run a business, talking about how Hangman Page doesn't have respect or won't take guidance from his elders. And like the idea of like bringing up the idea like tell Terry Funk that you're not going to pay attention to his advice, and tell Sammy Sosa that you know how to hold a bat and you can't learn anything from him and stuff like that. And just this whole idea that I'm a super experienced guy that's been doing this for years and years and years, obviously not the last 7, but we'll leave that aside. But then saying that you've got these young guys who don't want to take advice from someone like me who can really help you out, then and basically using that as an idea to present that these up-and-comers, specifically Hangman Page, I know he doesn't really target everyone like that. I know he says the idea about he working with fucking children and stuff like that, and he's tired about that, but I don't know whether that was just, again, it's hard to see where the lines between kayfabe and reality blurred in those instances.
And when he's vague, it's hard to tell who he's talking about, because is he talking about children being the Young Bucks, or is he talking, I work with children being people like, you know, like a Ricky Starks or somebody who is like on the younger side, or, you know, it could be anything like that.
The only things we can say with absolute certainty is the people that he was targeting were Scott Colton, the Young Bucks, Kenny Omega as the EVPs, and Hangman Page.
Yeah, because I mean, he flat out said EVPs, so that's definitely not a reference to Brock Anderson.
It could be obviously relating to the current EVPs, but it could also be related in some parts to Cody Rhodes as well, because Cody Rhodes was there when Punk joined. So and from what I can at least gather, or at least I've heard from other people, is that there's no love lost between Cody Rhodes and CM Punk. So there's that aspect of it as well. But obviously Cody's not there, and the EVPs were there, and the EVPs were very close to CM Punk at the rest of the evening. We can move on to that now, because I think that we've pretty much said everything that needs to be said about the Punk talking aspect of it.
Yeah, so what happens afterward, which you can see apparently now people have been able to decipher. When Jericho was here, that he mumbled to Tony Khan, like, yeah, some shit's going down backstage. Where Punk had said, you know, hey, if you've got an issue with me, I'll be walking up and down the halls and we can settle it. So the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega seemingly decided to take him up on that offer. With this, you know, I understand standing up for your friends, and then they stood up for their friend. And I've seen contradictory reports here and there, some different stories, some different accounts reported of like, this is what happened. Now this is a better phrasing of what happened or whatever. Rob, you might have a better grasp of this, but correct me if I'm wrong. It was potentially the Young Bucks had come to talk to Punk and went to his locker, is how this started, right?
So, regardless of the different tellings of the stories, it's they went to Punk's locker room and a confrontation erupted almost immediately.
Whether it was that they broke down the door to get to him, or they didn't, or...
Yeah, some had reported they kicked the door down.
I'm assuming super kick.
And then from the Bucks camp, they had said, no, we opened the door to talk to him, as he said in the media scrum that we should. And almost all accounts say, and shortly thereafter, Punk started swinging.
Was it Matt Jackson?
He swings at Matt, yeah.
And then you've got Ace Steel and his wife and their dog?
No, the dog is Punk's dog.
Punk's dog. That his wife is looking after Punk's dog. That's what it is, right? Ace Steel's wife's looking after Punk's dog at the time.
Ace Steel's wife apparently also has a broken foot. She's in the middle of this confrontation, which I think sets Ace off, and a chair goes flying into
He
Nick
throws a chair at Nick Jackson and hits him around the eye,
and it knocks him out.
Gives him a potential concussion, knocks him out.
Kenny Omega is apparently trying to just get the dog out of the room and then get Ace off of Nick, which gets Kenny bitten.
But not by the dog, but by Ace.
It's look, any way you slice it, this is severe structural failure in AEW. And I think these growing pains were coming, but it's time to change that structure around. You can't let active roster members be EVPs, because clearly it's an issue. And I don't even know, like, where do they all go from here? You had a backstage fight. A ton of people got suspended. Not just the people involved in the fight, but Nakazawa and Cutler, who you can assume were with the Bucks and Kenny, because they are.
Mm-hmm.
And Chris Daniels, which I'm assuming is in relation to the fact that he's talent relations. I haven't read a breakdown of the story that had him in the room.
Right.
You know,
I didn't even actually hear that he had gotten suspended as well.
Like Pat Buck.
And Pat Buck, who is also an agent. I think this is, regardless of whatever, and the tribalism on the internet is something I don't even want to get into because it makes me genuinely sick.
I mean, that's with anything like this. Not only do we always see people taking sides, but it is kind of, we've said it before with the AEW and WWE. You can enjoy both. You can criticize both. When it's good because good things are good. When it's bad because bad things are bad. And when people are like, nope, I'm going to be 100% on Punk's side. I'm going to be 100% on the Buck side. I'm going to be 100% on, hey, it's screw AEW. They're going to go down. Haha, I watch WWE. It's so ridiculous.
It's gross. And it's my hope that they can take this awful situation that has exposed so many flaws within this company. Not only in the fact that, okay, it's not all paradise, which gets people thinking, okay, so maybe there was some tension before Cody left. Everything seems to be exposed now, but now that they've had this incident, you've suspended the Elite, you've stripped them of their titles, Punk's status appears to be pending on a third-party investigation, and moving forward, I want more structure. I want Tony Khan to kind of show more leadership. And I hope that this ugly incident can be moved past. I don't expect it to at this point. I imagine these parties will never work together again. But I think that it's just unfortunate, and it's exposed that maybe it's not the best idea to have a company by the boys for the boys.
I would agree with some of that and disagree with some other aspects of it. The main thing that I would disagree in is the fact that I don't think the fact that the Bucks and Kenny are in authoritative positions within the company is any issue whatsoever. The fact of the matter is, even though they called out the EVPs, it's the reason Punk has the issue with the EVPs. Seemingly, I'm not saying that other people don't, but the fact that they are wrestlers and decided to go confront CM Punk, the main issue for me is just the fact that they settled this like drunk people at the back of a bar, essentially.
The funny thing about that is
let's take our shirts off and go outside, and we'll handle it like quote unquote men being men. This will be the Undertaker's wet dream of a way of settling the argument. But that's the fact, that they're a bunch of grown men and they resorted to fighting and throwing objects and biting each other because they just, I don't know, that's just completely inexcusable behaviour. But anyway, you cut it. For the people that are doing these sort of like tribalism things, which I know we don't want to go super into, check your history books. They've told you enough times about the Montreal Screwjob that you should know that this stuff has happened in WWE, and it happened in WCW, and it happened in TNA, and it happened in every single wrestling promotion that's ever existed and will exist. These things do happen. This happened on a much more widely explored scale because of how public the CM Punk thing was and how immediate the blowout was afterwards, and the fact that it's essentially 4 of the top guys in your entire promotion involved in it.
Yeah, like you've got plenty of stories.
Yeah, it's an exceptional circumstance of a situation that has happened in many wrestling companies over the years.
Right.
So even though there definitely does need to be structural improvement, but I don't think it's irredeemable, or it's like, I don't know if it's even the result of growing pains. It's the result of, again,
clashing
I don't
egos.
want to well, yeah, big egos, and I don't want to point again. There are faults on multiple sides, but it does seem to be a very much a pre-CM Punk and a post-CM Punk culture within this company, which is there didn't seem to be very much that level of leaks and rumors of unhappiness and unrest before CM Punk was in the company, and then after he was in the company.
That's something I want to talk about too, because so much so to the point where Punk said that's why he joined the company. Because, hey, when the incident with Brody happened, nobody leaked anything, and I was so floored by that, and I respect that so much. And it just seems like that's all gone now.
Yeah, there's so much information coming out seemingly directly to, I'm not saying it's like journalists like digging even deeper or anything like that, but there seems to be a lot more knowledge of what's going on behind the scenes at AEW and who's upset about what and who wants out of the company and who is like troubled and who's not feeling good about the whole situation right now. It seems that there's a lot more news surrounding that, and that has to be coming from particular people talking to other people.
To touch on some of the things you're saying, because these are interesting enough points, each one on their own. The word hypocrite thrown around earlier. One of the things that people are calling attention to are tweets from CM Punk in the past of things like respect the Young Bucks. And then they're just kind of like, well, that didn't age well. Or when Sasha Banks and Naomi left WWE and walked out, Punk had tweeted out, you got to stand by your fellow coworkers, no matter if you disagree with them or not. People are like, what's happening now? There's something to be said about just the idea of people deciding that this is how they settle an argument. And this is something that, even when I was a little kid, this was something that didn't make any sense to me. A lot of people, and I'm sure there's even some people that are going to be listening to this that are going to disagree with me. There's like this kind of inherent macho duty some people feel, where they think, I'm a guy and the only way for me to get my point across is to threaten violence. And that's never been my philosophy. I've never thought you can win an argument by punching somebody, because that's not how you settle any argument other than proving that you can beat the person up. Like, you get into an argument with somebody, hey, you disrespected me in such and such way. No, I didn't. This is actually what I was intending. Oh yeah, well, why don't we fight? The fuck does that settle? That is like caveman attitude. When you get into, I can't actually argue my point of view, so ooga booga, punch, punch, punch. And I hate that about so many people. So anybody, doesn't matter if they're like a best friend of mine or an enemy of mine or whatever. I don't think I really have any enemies, but whatever. Maybe I do. I probably pissed off some people. But anybody who goes straight to the idea of, I disagree with that person, so I need to go into a physical fight to back me up, you lose your credibility from me. Argue your point of view. Discuss things. You can agree to disagree and not actually settle on anything, and your settlement could be literally the idea of, we can't settle and we're just not going to get along, and that's the end of it. But if you think that you can argue whatever they're arguing about, something about like, Hangman Page not taking advice and Punk being, okay, well, I think that that's kind of shitty and you should, then does anything get settled if you punch the guy in the face? No, it doesn't accomplish anything.
I think there's a lot of, and I'm not let me be clear. I don't know if I can be any more clear. I've said this ad nauseum since Sunday. I think that this can be worked through, and I think that, it's not about a pointing fingers situation, but I think there's a clear, bringing up this situation, stewing in this situation, and in any way is very toxic for Punk. So I think as soon as you say anything regarding Cabana or that time in his life, he's just like, now I'm belligerent. And I do hope he gets whatever help he needs. I do, it does seem unfortunate that wrestling seems to have, triggered something, and nobody handled this the right way.
That's another thing that you said about you mentioned the ROH thing, and that just seems to spark that out of him. Fundamentally, there's a truth, and that's the end of it. We don't know what it is, but if people are suggesting that Punk had something to do with Colt Cabana not being on, he hasn't been on AEW television at all, I think, right? Since Punk has been on there, he's only been on Ring of Honor.
No, he wrestled Bryan on one of the TV shows.
Since the Punk thing, can't remember, but
it was in the build up. Well, it has to be because Bryan debuted after Punk debuted. So
yeah, I guess so.
Yeah, it was in the build up to the Danielson was taking on basically everybody in the Dark Order leading up to facing Hangman Page for the title. But that's the only instance I can remember. And certainly, I don't think he's wrestled in AEW this entire year. So,
but the way that situation is, there is no debate about it. There are only 3 possible scenarios. Actually, no, there's 4. I'll give credit to a 4th one. Number 1, Punk had something to do with Colt Cabana not being around. Like, he actively reached out to Tony Khan and said, I don't want to be fucking around that guy. Number 2, he didn't. Either he did or he didn't. You can't say that he did both. If he didn't, then it could be a scenario where Tony Khan said, I don't really want to use Colt Cabana because, let's face it, this year has been the year that contracts have been expiring, and people like Jack Evans and Marco Stunt and Sonny Kiss and other people have been either booted out of the company or they've been severely diminished in their use. So it could have been a scenario where Tony Khan could have said, completely unrelated to CM Punk, and maybe even if Punk wasn't even in the company, we still could have gotten Colt Cabana not being around all that much. And it could be Colt Cabana deciding that he doesn't want to be around. He could be the one that says, I don't really want to hang around CM Punk. And Punk could have said nothing at all. Those are the only ways that this really can have happened. It could have been a coincidence. And we just haven't seen him because of whatever. Maybe he does want to use him in Ring of Honor and he doesn't want to use him at AEW. And that's completely a Tony Khan call. If you are on the elite side and if you are saying like he had something to do with this and you don't know, then you're speculating. And if you are helping run the company and you're running your mouth about he did this and I know it and whatever, and you don't know for sure, then you're kind of undermining the company by just playing into the speculation. If you do know, and you know for a fact that Punk had something to do with it, then Punk needs to shut the fuck up. It's one or the other. It's either you did or you didn't. And then if he didn't, and the Young Bucks have the wrong perception, then Tony Khan is the one that needs to go, no, he didn't. That's the end of it. The three parties here have to communicate. And if they aren't willing to communicate and they just want to throw a fist at each other or whatever, then you're never going to have a proper resolution.
Well, we also need to talk about this aspect of it as well, is the fact that Punk seemingly had the impression within the scrum that the EPs were the one who were leaking this information, or at least like helping spread these rumors and ideas, or not helping with the situation at the very, very least. And nobody pressed Punk. And again, I don't want to attack the journalists because I imagine most of them were just there with their jaws at the floor, that everything they were seeing in front of them unfold. But nobody pressed him on the fact of why does he think that the EVPs are the ones leaking that information? Or why did no one say, yeah, I mean, we heard about this stuff with Scott Colton and Colt Cabana, but we didn't get it from the Bucks or Omega, so why do you think the EVPs are involved in this? So it's like, why is he so strongly of the opinion? I know he could maybe get some sort of conjecture from the fact that obviously the Bucks and Cabana are close. Mm-hmm. They're good friends. So maybe he's just essentially taken that as a indicator that if people are hearing about this, it must be coming from them. But he has no evidence. Well, if he does have evidence to suggest that's the case, they should have pressed him on it to find out.
Right.
And if he doesn't have any evidence of it, then he's just running his mouth for the sake of running his mouth.
Right.
About it. And either way, it's not good. And it could then also lead to the reason why they're just busting up over this, as opposed to, being able to settle this like grown adults. But we need to address, we could talk about these things in circles. We need to talk about the injury now.
Oh, well, I still have two other things I wanted to talk about before that. Sure. Because one of the other things you had said, and I think this is something that's indicative of the way that things have been lately. I keep using the phrase, where there's smoke, there's fire. You mentioned everything seemed okay until Punk came around.
He's such a person of great interest because he is clearly he's a great wrestler, great talker. He has this kind of this charisma and magnetism about him that really gets people animated and gets people excited and gets people invested in what they're looking at. So he certainly has a great deal of weight as a character. Like, he's someone who you want to have as a personality on your roster because he just has that magnitude about him. but that comes with a cost of the fact that he is, by his own admission, a prick.
Mm-hmm.
And he rubs people up the wrong way. I mean, we all thought for a time that it was just Eddie Kingston, and that was like the main guy that seemed to have a problem with CM Punk. But over time, it's more and more people have developed issues with him. We clearly know about the Hangman Page stuff. Scott Colton was there before the company, and according to Punk, they haven't been friends since around about like 2013, 2014. And then you have all the stuff with the Elite now, and I imagine there's a lot more people that aren't super keen about having Punk around the company, especially after this latest incident. And I think that is indicative of the fact that he is someone who is
polarizing.
Yeah, well, he's a native shit stirrer. He's someone who wants to. I think he does really want the best for AEW, and he wants the company to succeed, and he wants to go about pro wrestling in his vision of what he sees pro wrestling is. But he seems to not be able to find common ground with some people about what their vision is or what they decide to do. And instance like the Hangman Page thing, where he's been going on and on about this promo, this going into business with himself promo, about a promo that none of us remembered up until the point it started coming up that was something that he was upset about.
I honestly can't even tell you what the promo was now.
It was just one face-to-face thing where he talks about the whole bringing up like the workers' rights things and stuff like that.
Is that the thing where he said, I'm defending I'm not defending the title.
From you.
I'm defending AEW from you. And that was like, that got under Punk's skin so much?
Well, no, because, see, you're looking at it the same way we all did, because, at least for myself, at the time, I was like, what is this promo? This is so weird. They're both baby faces, and this feels really hostile. And I guess Punk felt like he was coming at him about a specific issue, and nobody in the time since has denied that he was. But it's just all been very strange, and I think where it seems like it could have died at Double or Nothing, because Punk gets injured and never gets the chance to come back and give his little shot back, it seems like it festered for those months, from my perspective.
There's another thing about the idea that with Hangman Page not taking advice, he had said something along the lines of, I would take advice if he would say something. Where it was like kind of implying Punk hasn't given any advice.
Well, that in particular is Page made a comment at GalaxyCon that he's not big on taking advice, because even though he'll listen, he feels like, I'm one of the guys who started this revolution, and I've been a world champion here. I'm not sure I need to take your advice. That's what he said. That seems like something that has just rubbed CM Punk the wrong way because of everything else. But I want to touch on one more thing, because there was a report from Fightful Select that specifically stated after the incident, we're told that Cabana had indicated to Khan before Punk's original comeback that he'd likely not be happy working there if Punk was in the company.
Which makes sense. You know, they did have legal issues. It's not even like, we don't kind of get along all that much. No, you had people suing each other. So it's...
Punk holds Cabana personally responsible for costing him millions of dollars. So that is... Yeah. If you want to see like the fall of a friendship right there, I mean, if anything's going to destroy a friendship, money is usually one of the main causes of that.
It's either money or it's some kind of romance.
Yeah, usually to the level that they're at, where they've gone from being reasonably good friends from what we can gather from like the early 2010s into literally not wanting to be in the same vicinity as each other. That's something along those lines would usually be the cause of it. But yeah, I think that you just get... go ahead, Rob.
Just to wrap this up for me, it's unfortunate, and I feel a little guilty in a sense of like, it's just more talking heads adding their piece to this issue that's very personal and very volatile, and we shouldn't even have to be commenting on it, because the deals between Punk and Cabana, as he laid out in that media scrum, are very personal to him, because they were friends for so long and it was a nasty fallout. And I think that has now, torn into this whole company, and it's just, this isn't something I want anyone to be doing moving forward. And I hope that all of the crazy personal leaks stop with this, but I can imagine that now that door is open, you can't shut it again.
That forbidden door.
Yes. The real forbidden door.
I did see another thing that had said, I don't remember if it was SRS or someone else, but that there had been potentially issues with the Young Bucks and Punk from years ago, that they had, when they reached out to him about joining the company and he had said no, that they were rubbed the wrong way, and kind of like that this has been stewing since then. I don't know if there's, of course, any truth to that. Take it with a grain of salt, of course. But if that's been something that's been, you start things off with, hey, we're creating a company that, for all intents and purposes, was the two possible avenues, I guess maybe you could say the three avenues that they could have gone, which was Tony Khan wanted to create World's Best Wrestling revolving around CM Punk. The Elite wanted to have their own company coming out of All In. And Cody Rhodes seemingly was trying to make WCW 2.0 in a lot of different ways. We've talked about that before, with him trying to get like Bash the Beach, and we're calling this the bunkhouse thing and this and whatever, and very much I want to be bringing that back, my childhood and everything. Cody's left, so that takes the WCW stuff out of the equation, and then you've got the Elite and you got the Punk stuff, and that divide could have started with Punk saying, I'm not really interested in joining, and then the Elite could have taken that as a slight of, hey, we're giving you this big offer and we're doing this, and you don't want to be a part of this, then that guy's too big for his britches, and we don't really like him as much anymore or something. Everybody seems like they're at fault to a certain degree, at least when it comes to miscommunication. And sometimes communication can be both parties' faults. Like we had talked about the idea of maybe the Bucks are blaming Punk on something that he didn't do. Maybe Punk is saying the Elite is leaking stuff, and maybe they aren't, because there's been other things about, like Meltzer, I think, had said, I don't talk to the Bucks outside of the public interviews, which take that with a grain of salt as well. And if people don't communicate, it could be fault on both ends, or it could just be one side is not willing to hear the other one out. We don't know. We're not privy to those conversations, but it was handled poorly to the point that you've got people getting bitten backstage and a chair thrown, and that should never be the case. Even if you are not willing to work together, it shouldn't devolve into that no matter what office space you're in. So whether they continue to be on the same roster is seemingly not a thing, I would imagine. The suspensions are out. We've gotten people stripped of the championships. And part of that is because CM Punk is also injured. So it's not even a matter of, well, we're just going to put everybody off to the side and we're going to let them all come back and we're going to crown some interim champion. No. Punk is injured again, either injured during his match or, well, I guess you could say
it was during the match. It was and pretty much it seems that everyone seems to be in at least some sort of agreement that it was during that tope that he hit on Moxley, which is more argument to the fact that nobody should be doing that move other than Darby Allin. But that's neither here nor there. The
tope, suicida, suicide dive, whatever you want to call it, that shouldn't be a move that most people should be doing anyway, especially because it doesn't get the pop anymore, and it's really risky for so many different injuries, so it's not worth it. But Punk gets injured again, and could have exasperated it during this backstage altercation as well, so that wouldn't have been great.
Yeah.
But that's another thing, too, to go, maybe you don't put the belt on this guy. Maybe he doesn't have it in him to be able to withstand that kind of punishment to his body anymore. And maybe you, of course, don't put it on him anymore because maybe he's not a part of the company, or maybe he's not somebody you want to build the company around or whatever. But maybe he shouldn't have come back already.
All right.
So there is that. Go ahead, Callum.
Well, going beyond the idea of like he shouldn't have come back at this point, or shouldn't have come back to wrestle All Out. The fact that the injury is completely distinct from the foot injury.
Oh, it is? I thought it was. I thought he re-injured the foot. Sorry,
it's his arm.
He's torn. Yeah, he's torn. Well, it's either a torn bicep, a torn tricep, or a torn pec.
Oh, okay. I had only seen that there was like another injury based thing. I didn't see a clarification. Okay.
No, yeah. So it's a completely different injury. It is an injury that's if it's torn pec, it's the same thing that Cody's got.
Yeah.
And but if it's a torn, regardless of which one of those injuries it is, it means that he'll be out for about 8 months. So that is obviously that is not something that you can have an interim champion over that period of time. So the vacating the title makes even more sense than it would have previously done. In fact, if it was just a punishment for what happened. But yeah, it does raise the question about whether Punk can still go in these longer, more high intensity matches and still his body can hold up to it. He is mid-40s. He hadn't prior to this year, he hadn't wrestled for an extended period for a very long time. So his body might no longer be able to withstand the rigors of consistent in-ring action. He might have to, if he does come back, it would have to be probably on a more limited part-time schedule.
Pop up here and there, do a match once every couple of weeks or something.
I would say that the foot injury at the very least is a freak injury in terms of the fact that he injured it trying to jump into a crowd of people and then exasperated it by wrestling the match afterwards. But I mean, these injuries can usually happen as a result of wear and tear. So it could be just the fact that his body, that was just the moment that all the stuff that he'd been doing for the weeks and months prior finally caught up to him. So I think that there is a good argument to be made about the fact that Punk just doesn't have the physical capability anymore for going as long as he does to be in matches as frequently as he was prior to what was happening. And it does just raise the question about whether you can trust him, not just from the own just personality aspects and what's happened, but just from a physical standpoint, whether you can trust him holding a title going forward or being a prominent part of television. But I mean, the big question needs to be raised about this is obviously there is legal investigations pending. So there's only so that's why there's probably as much intrigue in the fight as there has been beyond just the original speculation, is because there could be some big ramifications faced by certain people over the fallout of what happened to who and who was involved in what. But it does kind of raise the question of now Punk's going to be on the shelf for 8 months. You can't fire him because then you're firing an injured wrestler.
But
which
you're not firing an injured person like if they were to fire, say, Becky Lynch right now, where it's just sort of, okay, she's injured and screw her. We don't care if she can make anything from there. It would be a disciplinary thing, which I think kind of negates that a little bit.
It does, but it also there are optics to it.
Yeah, I mean, you would be basically taking the elite's side, and then you're running the risk that anybody who's pro CM Punk on this argument goes, screw Tony Khan. Of course, he's backing his boys and all that. I mean, you can suspend him in terms of like refusing to pay him for a certain period of time if that's the course of action would take. But then again, there's this third party investigation happening, and that might have ramifications that go beyond wrestling. Put it that way. We'll see what if anything comes up from that side of things. But there is like at least a strong argument to be said that they should fire him. There's a strong argument said that they should continue to pay him, but essentially let him sit out the rest of his contract, which means that he can't go to WWE anyway because he's going to be out injured anyway. And don't know whether he'd even want to go back to WWE. I don't think they'd let him.
I disagree with that.
For that. I mean, again, he's one of those guys that's You do that because you know how big it can blow up in your face. And that's like a big more overarching point of this. I don't think, despite all of this stuff that's happened and how like immense this new story is and how much playback it's got, I don't think Tony Khan regrets hiring CM Punk. Because in the immediacy and for the year or so he was part of the company, they did some really great stuff, and they got some really good buy rates, and he was definitely like a big draw for a lot of fans, and they told some really great stories, with the MJF and Punk one in particular being one of like the best storylines they've ever done on AEW almost. So it's not a case of like the good outweighing the bad, but it's a case of they got a lot of good out of it, and he probably in the back of the mind, a lot of people always knew it had the potential to end like this. So I think that if WWE saw that, they would say, if we bring him back for a few special matches, we give him like a Goldberg style contract, so he doesn't have to be backstage all the time. We can just pay him a decent amount of money to do a match here or there, or do one big story or one big feud. We put him in the Hall of Fame, all that other stuff. Then they would definitely. I don't see why they wouldn't do it. My question over that would just be whether Punk would be willing to do it, and maybe to piss off AEW if they do decide to fire him or let him go, or to just
out of spite contract.
Out of spite. He would like, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. That type of.
Suddenly, he's dialing up Triple H. Trips.
Yeah.
So, buddy, you want that WrestleMania match we're talking about?
Listen, if Trips is willing to extend an olive branch to the Ultimate Warrior, I'm pretty sure he's willing to do it. If he'd be willing to do it for CM Punk. But yeah, that's a very future focused thing, because at least for the next 8-9 months, Punk's not going to be doing anything except sitting on his couch thinking about what he did and what he didn't do and all that other stuff. But that's whatever the consequence ends up from that, whether that's the result of the investigation or just internal stuff or whatever. But the basic matter of this, right, as of prior to Dynamite, the Trios Championships are held up, and all the Elite are suspended, as well as the other parties involved. And there's no sign of Punk. There's no mention of CM Punk.
And there's no mention of, you gotta be honest, there's no mention of the Elite too.
By name, they didn't mention any of the people.
Mm-hmm.
They took all of them out of the intro.
They are not on the posters of anything going forward that I've seen. It's been, like somebody like Keith Lee or somebody had like moved up to the front, and Tony Khan didn't do the announcement of this in front of the crowd. He did a pre-tape, which was probably the better way to go about it, just because that way you don't have the crowd chanting anything stupid or anything, and you don't have.
They booed him
they
anyway.
did boo him a little bit.
Yeah, and he was much more just straightforward, like, look, I vacated the titles. We're going to do this about the titles, and that's what it's going to be going forward. I hope you enjoy Dynamite. It was, the kind of relaxed, tame version of that, instead of trying to sensationalize anything and make this into an angle, which, of course, that's another thing to talk about. So many people are still adamant, this is a work. They're trying to make their own Montreal Screwjob. It's not a work at this point. Come on.
I worry so much about those fucking people.
They're disconnected from reality enough. It's just
like, my God, really? You really think that they would do all of that?
And look at it this way. If by some absolutely astronomically crazy way this is a work, fucking hats off to them for whatever, if they can pull it off and actually turn this into something positive, because it's looking like all negatives right now. And if it all just becomes, my God, you didn't realize the genius of what we come around to, then that would be totally nuts. But it's not. And
to be clear, they can get them to, shake hands. Maybe you can someday turn this into something, but I don't believe that this is in any way a work.
I think that the people that are hyping up that idea are the ones that they've got the poor self-esteem enough that they just want to desperately be like, I wasn't fooled. You know what I mean? And, if that was the case, then wouldn't that be fun? Don't you want to be fooled? Don't you want that suspension of disbelief to go, God, they got me? Because you're a fan, right?
It's that compulsion to be the smartest guy in the room.
Right, yeah.
It really is.
So that's another thing to, whatever. Yeah. But we have the championships are in this situation right now where I feel bad for MJF, but I think it's going to come back around.
I mean, I would feel sorry for MJF if he himself hadn't ruined Double or Nothing for a lot of people as well with his own antics. Like that whole Wardlow things, like that was supposed to be Wardlow's big night, and everyone was just talking about the fact of the MJF and the airplane tickets.
Yeah, that's true. Fair enough.
So if anybody is obviously should be annoyed about the fact that his moment kind of got overawed by all this, but kind of feel like maybe a bit of karma's hit his way, I think that should be what MJF would be feeling.
Well, he started off the night with this great promo that I love, because I love MJF, of being pure babyface. He's got on the jersey to get the crowd to pop for, the best, what's the guy's name that he had mentioned? The best player.
Josh Allen.
So he's like, really hyping up all the it's so great to be here in Buffalo and all this. And Moxley comes out, talks about how MJF is bullshitting, and MJF's, what, you think I'm bullshitting about these fucking terrible people in here and all that? And I'm like, yes. Oh my God, I wish I could do that for one night. That'd be so great. It ends basically with the idea of at least teasing this is the program that's going to be going forward at the end of the day with the title, and Moxley cutting a promo that, to me at the very least, read as, I'm sick of all these fucking children acting like this. We should all be professionals. It's kind of annoying that I had to drop the belt to a guy that ended up doing what he did last night. Maybe I'll get everything back on track, and I'm pissed.
Jon Moxley, what AJ Styles was to TNA, Jon Moxley is now forever to AEW. He's the face of this company. He is the guy who has had to pick up the ball and run with it in the worst of times. Pandemic, Moxley. Punk gets injured, Moxley.
Punk gets injured again right afterward. Moxley.
I think this was a masterful promo for him. I think it sets the company back on track. I like the statement of that belt is supposed to represent the new way of doing things and no political bullshit. And I don't think he's going to win. I think Bryan's going to win. But I think Moxley is forever the top babyface of AEW.
This whole segment was just what you needed after all of the bullshit that happened beforehand. You needed to set the tone just right. And having MJF come out and be a pseudo babyface for a while, trying to get crowd doing an AEW chant. That little line with the woman in the crowd was fun. It's just was saying this big girl in the front row and stuff like that. No, I'm just kidding, honey. I'll call you up after the show.
He made a comment about I'm not even gonna say that you people in Buffalo are ugly. Like you in the front row. I'm just kidding, sweetheart. We'll meet up after the show.
Yeah, he was playing into it so fucking well.
And it's the way that he does it as well, because he's still an arrogant prick, because even though the way that he does it as a babyface, and it just shows how good he could be as a babyface going forward. But it's the idea that he proclaimed himself to be bigger than Moses as well. Yeah. And yet he's still a babyface. The crowd just loved that. And then Moxley comes out and calls out MJF, and MJF goes on the tirade about this whole new thing, which is the thing that essentially the carry on with the reason that he left in the first place, which is that he wants to use the belt as a bargaining chip for the bidding war of 2024, where he talks about Cody, and he brings up the game, and he brings up jolly old Saint Nick and all this other stuff.
Yeah.
Taking his title and then using it to get a shit ton of money from WWE and then leave AEW. So they're still carrying on that train.
I want to work for a real wrestling company and a real boss and everything.
Yeah. So I mean, that'll be interesting how it proceeds going forward. They're definitely still guns blazing on that. MJF's still firmly heel, and they're still telling the story that MJF is the heel because he wants to go to the quote-unquote heel company. But we'll cross that bridge. It's not as much of a heel as it was a couple of months ago, let's put it that way. So maybe we'll see how that pans out. But Moxley, fucking hell, if there isn't an MVP of this year for AEW, like, if there's anyone else other than Moxley, I don't know who it would be, because this guy is, the promo that he cuts here is just so powerful. It's so emotive. It's so layered in. If you know the situation, then it feels even more impactful. But even if you didn't know what was going on, it would still feel really powerful because he sets it in such kayfabe. He talks about the fact that he lost at the thing. He doesn't say that he's upset about the fact that he was booked to lose or anything like that. He doesn't go super meta. He just says he lost and he'll get over it. But now he's got another opportunity to take the ball and move forward. He does what, let's say, Sammy Guevara didn't do, where he bigs up all the people who we're facing in the tournament who could be the obstacles that he goes up against. He talks about how he should have been on vacation after that match, but he's come back to take this opportunity again. He highlights the fact that he wants to be the legend. It's beyond the point of like just wanting to be the top guy in the company. He wants to be AEW's legend and lead this company in the way that it should have been led. And this kind of moves on to something which has also come to the forefront afterwards, because there was a talent meeting, or a whole company-wide meeting that took place, and the three names that were brought forward as like, these are the people that organized it, or at least took the leadership run of this thing, were Jon Moxley, Bryan Danielson, and Chris Jericho.
Which somebody out there is shivering, going, "It's all WWE guys!" Ah! You know?
But it's so refreshing to have three people who have literally seen anything there is to be seen.
Mm-hmm.
In basically any perspective of pro wrestling, especially Jericho. Obviously, the other two have definitely seen a lot of things as well through all the independents, through WWE. But Jericho was there with WCW. He was there through like loads of times of tumultuous and change. And to have all three of those guys there with so much experience and that calm, more level-headed approach of things is such. It must be such a relief for someone like Tony Khan, and a relief for everyone who kind of wants AEW to succeed, to have them there as this base of the company.
There are anchors for sure.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. And it's made me appreciate all three of them a lot more. I know there are certain people that obviously Jericho is a figure of some discomfort for some people due to his political stances. But I think people, at least just from the perspective of what he's doing for AEW and what he has done for AEW, I don't know how you can't have just a tremendous amount of respect for him for that. And Danielson has always been a guy who just smiles through any adversity, and he seems to have like this great sense of humor and this great attitude towards things. And Moxley, you can just tell from that promo, he's so passionate about this place succeeding because he knows what it's like when wrestling is not fun, and he wants this place to be fun. Like, those three guys, if Tony Khan leans on them and is able to use them and in leadership roles, and they could be the voices that people go to when they are having trouble with things, and there's less of this less of these leaks and less of this like immediately going to places where they potentially shouldn't be, and keeping more things in-house and sorting things out internally and having discussions rather than resorting to violence. That will help AEW weather this storm and move forward, and hopefully into a brave new future. Because essentially this whole episode to me was basically Tony Khan in a pseudo way saying to Punk, the Bucks, and Kenny Omega, I can put on a great wrestling show without even mentioning you.
Mm-hmm. I don't know if that was necessarily like he had that in his mind, but I don't think it came across like that he could pull it off at least, you know?
Yeah, it showed.
Yeah,
Yeah.
if it wasn't like the outright thing of it, it was definitely, I could at least imagine it be something that was in the back of his mind. And actually, before we get on to the rest of the show, because there's a lot of stuff that we want to talk about there's one thing that I think went a little bit under the radar at the scrum, due to the Punk stuff and all the stuff surrounding it. And that was the segment where Tony Khan was just talking to the media. And there's one part in particular where they start talking about WWE. And they start talking about them running these shows against, or at least in the same weekend as All Out. And you can definitely sense a change in Khan's attitude when that question was asked. And he was also asked a similar question in the build-up to All Out. I can't remember what radio it was or what interview he was doing it with. But they talked about do you have any hope of a kind of Forbidden Door show or a relationship with WWE due to the regime change? And Khan essentially said, well, I'd hoped so, but ever since they've treated me since the regime change, I'm pretty certain that's not going to happen. Words to that effect, I'm probably paraphrasing. But that was the essential vibe he's getting across. I think Tony Khan is really angry at WWE. Or he's really got the bit between his teeth now. And I'd be interested to see how that manifests itself on television. Like, I think this could be a real gloves are off type situation.
Yeah, and he flat out said, I got more money than Jim Crockett, and I'm not going to take this fucking shit. So it could be a time of even more competition. I just think I'm glad they have these people. Brian is such a level-headed person by all accounts. Jericho is a great leader. That's why he was the fifth name on board. I was going to say the fourth, but it was the EVPs and then Jericho, you know. He's the man here. He's the best person for that. And Moxley just seems so determined to give the rest of his career to this company. And I hope that everybody can move forward now. And we just don't have to deal with this. Oh, AEW is already getting toxic. Because I can tell you, like, I already regret never going to a show prior to this, because it's always going to have a weirder vibe to it.
Well, the championship situation is right now, because we know spoilers for Rampage, and I mean, it was kind of obvious what some of these were going to play out as well. They decided to do this Grand Slam Tournament of Champions, which I think is a good way of doing it. They justified everybody that was in here as somebody like, they're calling attention to their previous championships in other companies as well. So it's like Bryan Danielson, 6-time world champion. Obviously, that's not in AEW, but, you know, whatever. Hangman Adam Page, AEW World Champion one time, and then Tag Team Champion. Sammy Guevara, 3-time TNT Champion. Darby Allin, longest reigning TNT Champion. So they gave a justification behind this. They gave Moxley and Jericho a bye, which makes sense, because they have been not only the most world championships for Jericho, but also Moxley the most recent, and the person who just lost the title, and all these other things that go along with that. And we are going to get, after Danielson beat Hangman Page, we're going to get Danielson and Jericho, and Guevara and Allen leads to Moxley and Guevara. So the finals will take place at Grand Slam, and I am currently thinking this is how this goes. MJF had said something that, I don't know if it's just the wording or if this is kind of a hint of how it's going to be treated going forward. He said that the chip for the casino ladder match grants him a title shot anytime he wants. In all the other casino ladder matches and casino battle royales, they've had, it's going to determine somebody who gets the title shot, but then they've announced what the match is. And that could still be the case. It could just be the phrasing's a little bit off, but I got more of a Money in the Bank cash-in vibe from that, and that fits MJF's character a little bit better to be able to like steal a win and not just, I'm calling my shot for this event. I think we're going to get Jericho versus Danielson ending with Daniel Garcia involved in the way that we thought that it was going to happen at All Out. Jericho is going to, I think, actually lose that match. And then Moxley's going to be Guevara, and we're going to get Moxley versus Danielson. So where people go into it going, oh man, I'm totally fine with either of these two winning. And then MJF cashes in and wins the championship at Grand Slam.
I could definitely see that happening. I could see what I'm leaning towards. I think Rob's in the same boat as me. I'm leaning towards Danielson winning the tournament.
If somebody just wins the tournament, I think it's Danielson. Yeah.
Well, yeah. Well,
I think Danielson wins, but I also think MJF cashes in.
I'm on board with your thing as well, because he wouldn't cash in during the match. He would cash in after someone's won. That's true.
He could just steal it right after. Yeah.
Yeah, and we know very well that Bryan Danielson has a history of being cashed in on after winning a World Championship. So,
and we know that leads to great stories.
Yeah. So I mean, they could do it that way. They could have Moxley beat either Danielson or Jericho and get it, and then immediately lose it to MJF, because he is the heart and soul of the company right now. And so him losing it to MJF and then he could then go on vacation and have to work his way. Like when he comes back, he's just working his way back to the title. You could have Danielson win it, and then there's an immediate feud there. You can always, Danielson is the type of guy, or at least he's always given the impression of the type of guy that doesn't need to always be the top guy, or is always in the mindset of putting people over. So I think he's totally fine with the idea of, okay, I can take the title and hold it for like a minute, and then MJF can come and cash in on me. Because
more importantly, that sets up Full Gear.
Yeah.
For those two, Moxley can go away after losing to Danielson and have the vacation he was supposed to have. And I think MJF, Double or Nothing next year.
Yeah, you could definitely do that as well. So I think they should at least give, and then they can always say at that point that Danielson was an AEW World Champion. It might be the shortest reign ever.
Mm-hmm.
Which is it's somehow even shorter than Punk's
perfect for Danielson.
But that is what Danielson is there for. Like, yeah, he's the best wrestler in the world, but he's a guy whose seemingly mission in life is to always put other people over and try and make sure the person that he's wrestling is a bigger star than before he got in the ring with him. So we'll see how that pans out. They could go in a completely different direction. They could have MJF just say that if the wording of it is not like the Money in the Bank thing, they could have him just take on Danielson at Full Gear and win the title there. But either way, I'm leaning towards Danielson right now. It's definitely not Guevara. Jericho's
honestly, I wouldn't sleep on Darby.
Well, Guevara beat him.
He already lost.
Oh yeah, that's right.
So, yeah, unfortunately for those people that wanted to watch Rampage after this, but I'm sure there are other reasons. We won't spoil the entire show for people. But yeah, so, it definitely might be Guevara. I'd be very surprised if it's Jericho, but he's definitely an outside chance. It'll be one of Moxley and Danielson, because that makes the most sense for MJF to take the title from.
And more importantly, when you break down those options, Danielson's the only person that hasn't had a full-blown program with Max yet. So I think it leans more towards Danielson getting the belt.
And the one thing I like about that more than anything else, like the actual just match in general, is that we haven't seen as much of the Blackpool Combat Club as a unit in recent times. So it'd be good to just get almost the whole family together to almost watch and observe the two de facto leaders of the group go at each other in a full-blooded match to win the top prize in the company.
And William Regal has made it a point to always talk about, we need more people like Daniel Garcia outside of the Blackpool Combat Club so that iron sharpens iron and we are in the spirit of competition and everything. So he could definitely get across the point of, these two aren't feuding with each other. They're just two people fighting for a championship. They're still buds. They're still in the same group, but they happen to be both the number one contender.
Yeah.
Instead of it being, one of them has to turn heel and the other one's going to, start taking jabs at the other one on a promo. No, they don't need to do that. Just guy versus guy.
Yeah, they've shown that they're two people whose ambition is to be the best, and they will fight in the spirit of competition, but they'll still continue to be part of the same faction beyond this. I don't imagine one of them would turn heel on the other or anything like that. It's just I think that'd be a good way to, and it would be a really big match for Grand Slam as well. Something that people will be very interested in. And this whole tournament itself, it's a good way of like capitalizing on this very bad situation.
We got so many other titles. The title reign list on the Smark Moment this year for AEW is such a mess. It's you got Punk, you got Page, Punk, Moxley, Punk, Vacated, TBD. You got another interim champion with Tony Storm. We know that we're going to get Swerve in Our Glory is going to defend again against the Acclaimed, and I am kind of assuming that Tony Khan took to note what everybody was talking about with All Out, and he's just like, all right, let's do that match again, and let's put the belts on the Acclaimed. I really liked the idea that on this episode, everybody's pumped for the idea of hearing what Max Caster has to rap about, and as soon as it starts, Swerve interrupts just to get some heel heat like that. Thought that was great. You guys think that we're going to get the new tag team champions in the Acclaimed at Grand Slam too?
Yes.
Absolutely.
It'd be a mistake if they didn't, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it'd be odd if they decided to just run the match back to just have the same result, unless they are like very definitively turning Lee and Strickland heel.
Yeah. And we also have Daniel Garcia beat Wheeler Yuta to win the ROH Pure Championship.
Yeah, very good main event and the right decision.
Absolutely the right decision. And Garcia is now firmly established as one of the best pure wrestlers. He doesn't need to be in a group. Of course, he still can be if he wants to be, but he doesn't need it anymore.
And we got new trios champions. Young Bucks and Kenny Omega stripped of those titles as well. They decided to do Best Friends against Death Triangle. And this is another just little extra thing for the people that were like, oh, how come the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega and Brandon Cutler and whatever were suspended but not Hangman Page? I'm assuming it's probably because Page might not have been involved in the backstage thing. I haven't heard anything about Page being involved in that. I haven't heard anything about Cutler either, or Nakazawa, but they could have been. I don't know.
Well, I mean, they're suspended, so the likelihood is they're there. Page was out of the building by that point because he wasn't needed for the post-show scrum. So
yeah, so I mean, that could have just been an instance of he didn't do anything then. He might have been part of the instigation of this whole thing, but let's not suspend him for backstage things if he wasn't there. But he lost anyway, so I mean, that could be a little bit of a, hey, look, you're not even making it further into the tournament. But he lost to Bryan Danielson, so it's perfectly fine. But we went with Best Friends against Death Triangle to crown the new Trios champions, and I gotta say I'm disappointed. I thought that I am
also disappointed.
This was like, you give it to the Best Friends, you give it to the happy team, and when are they going to win the championships in another time frame? And instead, PAC's got 2 titles now?
Let me say, I understand what you're doing. You're replacing great wrestlers with great wrestlers.
Right. And it's not like Death Triangle is bad by any means. Of course, the Lucha Bros and PAC have more than enough great matches behind them.
I just think it would have extended a bit of an olive branch to people that are a little afraid that, like, hey, I'm not even going to get to see my favorites at Grand Slam. What the hell? I really like the Elite. I'm really upset. You could have said, hey, everybody loves Best Friends. Here's them being champions.
Yeah, I think I would have, if it was in my shoes, I would have leaned towards Best Friends winning, just because they've never won a belt in AEW so far. And I know that's like, you shouldn't just be handing everyone else belts and stuff like that. And I understand that Death Triangle are a very credible team. They're a very good trios unit. They're great wrestlers. So having them as trios champions is certainly not a bad thing. It's kind of hurt by the fact that PAC is seemingly only with the company a couple of months at a time and then goes away for a little while and then comes back. So we'll see how that plays out. And the fact that he's also holding another title belt, which he rarely defends on AEW shows anyway. So hopefully this doesn't interfere with that. But I want to look forward to a future where there's basically a trios match, even if it's not for the championships. Like, there's some trios match happening on Dynamite or Rampage pretty much every week, because these matches are great and this match was really good. And yeah, you give Death Triangle the titles. I'm sure they'll hold it for a while. We'll see who is the next one around. But I don't think these titles should be... There doesn't necessarily need to be a team that holds these titles for a very, very long time. I think they're ones that could switch around fairly often and just be involved in really entertaining matches a lot of the time. But I hope the best friends do get these titles at some point, because any titles, because I think they've maintained a level of openness enough to the point where they merit holding some gold.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and this would have been the perfect spot. You don't need 5-star, great match wrestlers holding every title at the same time. Best friends could have been like a nice fun champion. This could have been the fun belts for a little bit. And I think a lot of people would have popped to see Orange Cassidy get it. These are guys who day one signings, So I think it would have gone further with that portion of your audience. But maybe they have a better plan in mind. Who knows?
So that's the situation that's happening in AEW right now.
Well, we also talk about one more thing about Dynamite quickly before.
Yeah, go ahead.
Because obviously we know Tony's still not in a match. That doesn't really matter too much because it's just like a typical match, and then got like some more fallout, the Britt Baker Jamie Hayter thing, which I assume will build up at some point. But the main thing outside of all the other stuff that happened was Malcolm Bivens' crew. Malcolm Bivens, God, Stokely Hathaway.
I was
yeah, going back to NXT for a little while there. Stokely Hathaway and his eclectic collection of guys. Let's put it that way. Just guys that seemingly have no connection to each other than the fact they're all managed by Stokely Hathaway, which I'm kind of okay with because it puts more stake into the manager than anybody else. But they were having a promo segment, which basically Stokely Hathaway talked for about 15 seconds, and then he was getting cut off by a production assistant. And then they beat up the production assistant. So I'm kind of curious as to, and again, I'm willing to let this play out, and hopefully they will give an explanation over time, but want the explanation as to why they helped MJF win the chip in the first place, whether they're actually associated with MJF or whether it was just them getting paid to do his dirty work for that night, and also what their goal is as a unit moving forward, because it just seems at the moment like a group of guys. So that's the one thing, but I'm interested to see where they take this, because I like Stokely Hathaway, and so hopefully he can do something with this crew.
I don't like that they didn't address the Maxwell thing, but maybe they're just agents of chaos. I imagine, though, when he's ready to cash in, they will play a factor. Because now you can do BCC versus whatever this group of renegades is called.
I'm down to see it. That's for sure. That's a mess of a situation that's getting cleaned up a little bit here and there. And tonight we've got SmackDown, we've got Rampage. Who knows what happens over the weekend, and who knows what happens next week. But of course, the next episode of the Hot Tags next Friday, we will break that down, tell you about whatever our thoughts are on any of those issues, and also do whatever the main event is going to be, which we haven't quite figured it out yet. But if you have any suggestions, drop them in the comments below. And, we'll come around to that around the 14th or so. Probably record some kind of a dark cast over the course of the next few days. So stay tuned for that on the Patreon account and the YouTube members only content playlist. We've got a couple more weeks before Extreme Rules happens, but we'll break that down for the next pay-per-view point. And whatever else along the way, of course, you just find this all out by subscribing to this YouTube channel and checking out Fanboys Anonymous and Smark Out Moment on the websites and on Facebook and Twitter accounts. For everything under A Mango Tree, go to amangotree.com. For sirens, go to New York. You will get plenty of them all the time. And for my own personal Twitter account and Facebook and whatnot, just go to Tony Mango and see what else I'm talking about at completely random times that I feel like popping up Twitter and tweeting about something. Follow what these guys are up to as well. Rob?
Yeah, you can follow me everywhere at Dudeful East. make sure you check out Fightful.com for all of the updates as they come along. Fightful Select has hit well over 11,000 subscribers, which is amazing, and congratulations to the team over there. But again, check me out everywhere at Dude Felice, and I will bring you over to Callum Wiggins now.
You can find me on Twitter at Wigmeister14. Check out all the stuff that's on the Smark website. You've got the Power Rankings, which is my weekly contribution going out on every Saturday, but there's plenty of other stuff that you can dig into. I think the latest Triple Threat is a bit more of a deep dive into the whole AEW situation. So if you want some more written down thoughts about this, then check that out as well. You've also got the Fantasy League there as well, so you can follow all the latest standings, see who's picking up points every single week. And yeah, we're on the journey towards Extreme Rules now, where the next pay-per-view prediction contest will take place and hopefully can shake things up a little bit.
I'm still getting just trampled, aren't I?
I mean, yeah, at this point, it's not really much worth reporting on that front. But yeah, just keep following all that stuff along, and that is all from me.
Well, that's it for this edition of the Hot Tags. You got a sizable chunk of an episode today. We hope you enjoyed it. Let us know, and we'll see you next time, everyone. But for now, this has been another Smark Out moment, and we are being counted out.